I think in order to keep things sustainable and exciting and to actually stay in touch with your own sense of passion, it requires making the things that you need, making the things that help you make sense of reality, making the things that help you nourish yourself, making the things that you wish existed.
Hi, Kitty. Welcome to the Cosmic Heartist podcast. I am so excited to have you here, as I have said about 10 times. I'd love if we could start with you sharing a little bit about yourself and your favorite things in the world.
Mm. Well, first of all, hi, Karina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm also so excited to sit and chat with you. Um, I am 27 years old, and I'm primarily a writer. I really love writing poetry, and I've been writing pretty consistently since I was 20, so about past 7 years I've been a poet. But I love giving myself permission to just kind of explore whatever I'm interested in creatively. So I've spent the past couple years like writing, but also exploring my love for astrology and like working as an astrologer. And then most recently, I've been exploring DJing and my love for music. And with every little creative venture, it's reaffirmed for me the importance of creativity and the healing power of creativity and the transformative power of creativity. And so that makes creativity one of my favorite things in the world, you know? And so currently I'm working as a creative coach with people. Um, and it's just been a really cool way to meet like minded artists, like minded weirdos, and have conversations that like I normally wouldn't get to have otherwise, you know? Yeah.
I love all of that. Before we go deeper into any of it, what are your sun, moon, and rising?
Oh my God. I love that you're an astrology woman. um, I am a Virgo sun, an Aquarius moon, and a Gemini rising.
Okay. Aquarius moon, Gemini rising, Virgo sun. I was just going through your reels, like I told you before this, and I saw the one where you said creativity. I mean, perfection is boring. And that's so powerful to say as a Virgo. So I can't wait to get into that a little bit later. But I'm curious to know, because I love music and I've always wanted to DJ. And I think it's so cool that you taught yourself to DJ. So what was that process like? And how did it begin?
Honestly, you need to do it, Karina. I think anyone who loves music, anyone who is remotely interested in doing it, should just play around with it. Um, and I think you can totally use the internet and use Google and make it your best friend.
Mhm.
Um, and I can send you links to like programs that you can put on your computer for free, where you can
Yeah,
just messing around with uploading songs and like mashing them together.
yeah.
But I, a couple years back, uh, two of my very close friends that are a couple started DJing together,
Mm.
and and literally, and since then, it hasn't been too much time. They have had so much success in their DJ careers and their music production careers. And prior to me getting into it, like just watching them do it, I felt so much jealousy.
Mm.
And I like knew that that feeling, that envy, was just an indication that I really wanted to do this too. I really wanted to try
Yeah.
it for too. And then it's there's that like stereotype that everyone's a DJ now, but it's cool that it's fairly simple to get started and get into. And I like doing it has been so good for me because it's just a place to be playful and like literally it feels like I'm tuning into my creativity in a very different way than I'm used to. It's very
Yeah.
intuitive, you know?
Yeah.
Really cool.
It's so cool. I find it so fascinating because I'm a Libra rising and I love to like appreciate beauty, but I find it harder to like create beauty out of scratch, which is kind of how I got drawn into making flower arrangements because like the tool is like the medium is already there. It's just about curating it in a way that feels beautiful. And so it kind of feels similar with DJing. It's like you already have the music. It's not like you're going to make music from scratch, but you're mixing the music to create something that hasn't existed before. And that's alchemy. And that's so damn cool. And you were talking about the softwares. I did it for a very brief stint when I was like in high school. I downloaded Virtual DJ, which is like, I guess, really old school at this time, but but I think it's so powerful to just have these hints of things that we want to do. And I think it's also so brave that you noticed that jealousy and you were like, wait, it's jealousy not because of anything other than that's actually what I want to do. And isn't that actually the case? Like humans around us are actually I want to say hints to get closer to ourselves, to get closer to what we desire. Because when we feel envy or when we feel like, how are they able to do that? And I'm not able to do that. It's actually just our souls or our hearts telling us, wait, you want to do that and you can do that. So go do it because you'll probably be really good at it.
Yes. Karina, I love that. You're absolutely right. We are hints. And like seeing ourselves as that, like little
Mm.
permission slips, forms of inspiration, that could totally help you dismantle like competitive thinking big time,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially with your Aquarius, like it becomes competition. I mean, collaboration over competition, which I think is where we're really moving towards as Pluto has moved into Aquarius for the next 20 years. And everything is already about, or starting to become about community. And so it's no longer like, I want to take away from you what you have. It's, I want to help you shine, but also, can you tell me how to do that too? And
Yeah.
it's like swallowing our pride to be like, can you tell me how to do that too? Rather than being like, oh my God, I think that's so cool, but I'll never be able to do that. That's such a different energy to carry, right?
Big time. Yeah. And I also got super duper lucky that those friends who are DJs, now I can go to them with any question that I have. I
Yeah.
send them my and get like really fantastic advice and feedback from them because of the
Yeah.
people they too, like that's part of it. But for anyone listening who wants to do something and is talking themselves out of it because there's someone in their life already doing it, absolutely not. Like it can be
Yeah.
your thing too. And then to have a friend in the same world as you doing that creative thing together, like it's such a cool experience, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so where I want to dive really deep into from this is I've been seeing this statement around quite a bit, which is creativity is an act of rebellion. And I want to know what you think about it and how is it? How is it an act of rebellion?
Mm. Um, well, first of all, I do agree with that statement that creativity is an act of rebellion. To me, creativity and innovation go hand in hand. You know, creative thinking is innovative thinking. Um, and typically, in order to like really tap into your creativity, it requires some level of being solution oriented, you know, being willing to like remix something, create something either from scratch or something that doesn't quite look the way you want it to look, you know, like creative energy is inherently curious, you know, and it's creative energy is a form of change. Creativity wants to change things, you know, and so that's inherently rebellious because it's disruptive, you know, for better or for worse.
That's interesting because isn't change something that humans are most afraid of because it is the unknown. And so to dip into this like well of like creativity is like, oh my God, I'm drowning. But actually, when we're able to find something that feels good and take it and create from it, nothing actually compares to that feeling, no? Okay, so I know that you do a lot of reels on Instagram, which are amazing. And I was telling you about how whenever I feel a little bit stuck and I come and watch one of your reels, I get that oomph to do what I feel like I've been wanting to do just because of the way you deliver everything that you say. And everything that you say just makes so much sense. And I think it's things that we can all realize, but we don't take the time to sit with it. So until you come and say what you say, it doesn't really change that brain chemistry. So I'm curious to know what are three creativity hot takes that you carry? We can start with one and go deep into that one and then go to the next couple and go deeper into those.
That sounds good to me. Um, First of all, I do want to say that when it comes to anything that I share on Instagram or online, I'm usually just sharing a message that I need to hear in real time or something that I wish I heard when I was much younger, you know? So, in regards to like a hot take that I wish I heard sooner, um, and maybe this isn't like a crazy hot take, but I really, really think, and I operate from the place of our human consciousness being creative in and of itself, you know? And that to be a human being, for whatever reason, is to be a creative being,
Yep.
you know? And this kind of goes hand in hand with like manifestation oriented thinking, like a very spiritual perspective. But the thing is, like, no, we don't have total control over our lives and what we're born into and what we experience, but we do have creative control when it comes to how we respond to the world and who we choose to be.
Yep.
And I think that with every decision that we make, the big ones and the small ones, like we end up like literally creating ourselves.
Yeah. I love that take because it took me a long time to get there as well. But when I got there, I was
Mhm.
like, wait, we're co creating our lives every single day. Like, who are we to say that we're not creative? As humans, we are the most creative beings, whether we are like, no matter our gender, no matter where we're from, every day we wake up and we're creating life. And that's I think it's different when you're aware of that, and it's different when you're not aware of that, right? Because when you are aware of that, you're going through your life so much more intentionally. You're being so much more aware of what you're putting in there, what you're allowing yourself to digest, what you're allowing yourself to even see. Because
Mhm.
we know that we're going to end up alchemizing and creating out of that. But I love that hot take. Okay, what's next?
Um, well, you talking about being intentional about what you're putting into your system made me think about the fact that like I really believe in affirmational work and I really believe in brainwashing yourself,
Mm,
you know?
yeah,
Um, and I really do think that whatever you believe to be true about yourself and about the world, it ends up mirroring back to you, you know?
yeah,
Again, maybe this isn't a super duper hot take, but I believe in affirmations and I believe in you telling yourself the story that you want to live. And you literally have to feed your, especially as a creative person, you know,
mm,
creatives are sensitive.
mm,
And usually, very creative people were made to feel like the black sheep of their family, made to feel very misunderstood by either the people around them or just society at large. And so these people need extra support, extra guidance. You literally
yeah,
need to be finding sources of support to brainwash yourself with, you know,
yeah.
optimism to brainwash yourself with. It's not frivolous, it's actually so important.
Mm. Mm. I love that because now it's not just about us, it's about the people that we surround ourselves with.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's about being super smart about who we want to be. It's interesting, right? Because it's like a lot of times we end up creating from something that like pulled something within us.
Mm.
And most of the time, not most of the time, but often it ends up being through conversations that we're having with people. And so when we have those people that are having those deeper conversations or that are like telling us that they love what we do or like just cheering us on, it becomes such a different story versus I think when we're only talking to ourselves and technology.
Yeah.
Right? Because when it's based on technology, it's based on who's liking, who's commenting. Um, and people aren't always like they're not always attentive when they're scrolling. We're not always attentive when we're scrolling. So, like, just because we don't like something, it doesn't mean we don't actually like it, but we just maybe didn't have the time to watch, or we didn't have the time to click it, or we didn't have that time to say a comment, or whatever. I mean, it's 2025. There's so much going on in the world. Um, but what you're saying is making me think of how important it is to have physical people around us that Yeah, that we can go back and forth with, and that also brainwash us to remember, to remind us of the creativity that lives within us.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, you need people that like give you permission to
Yeah,
think bigger, to actually go for the things you want, you
yeah,
know?
yep, yep. And
It can
that's
take
why I love astrology. Astrology is just permission slip after permission slip to be whoever you are and do really whatever feels good to you.
I completely agree. It can be so validating to use something like astrology. Can
Yep.
I ask what's your big three?
Oh, yeah. So my big three are Leo sun, Taurus moon, Libra rising.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So that's me. Okay, next hot take. What do you have?
Yes. Um, I think one, this is an actual hot take. I think in order to survive as a creative, let alone survive as a person, I think you really have to be selfish, you know? I think you have to be selfish with the art that you make in the sense that it has to serve you. I think in order to keep things sustainable and exciting and to actually stay in touch with your own sense of passion, it requires making the things that you need, making the things that help you make sense of reality, making the things that help you nourish yourself, making the things that you wish existed, you know? And ultimately, whatever serves you and serves your humanity, it's going to end up serving other people, you know? And it's really easy for creatives to fall into the trap, to fall into some kind of like people pleasing trap, or fall into a trap of wanting to be successful and wanting to like serve other people and like looking too much into the external world for like what they should be doing, when the truth is literally the more selfish you are with your energy and like how you're using your time, it actually helps you connect with your intuition, and it's going to help you in the long run keep things sustainable, you know?
I mean, that kind of carries over from what you said in the first one, where like when I talked about the reels and you said, I'm actually just recording what I need to hear in the moment. And that's it. Isn't that it? Like, that's the content. Like, we're all watching these things of how to get our, like, how to get our posts seen more, how to like win at the algorithm. But actually, it's like, how can we just sit with ourselves and become aware of what we need to hear and just share that with ourselves on the app. And in the process, we're actually sharing it with other people as well. And that's why it's resonating with other people because actually it's coming from a space of resonance with us. I mean, everything is mirrors, right? We live in a world of mirrors, and whether it's energetic, whether it's physical, it's all just mirrors. And so when we're sitting with ourselves and we're doing that work to silence the world and we're kind of getting to know what it is that we need to hear and we're sharing that with the world, maybe they're not liking it or commenting, but like it lands in a different way than something that we said, oh, the algorithm likes this, so I'm just going to do this instead.
Yes, yes, completely. And then I do want to add to that that when you are
Yeah.
creating that space of like, I'm doing this thing just because I want to, then in my experience, you're less likely to be too like hung up on the numbers and the algorithm and is this performing well? Because at the end of the day, if you actually like are self-serving with your art, then you would do it regardless of who's paying attention, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're always paying attention.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. Okay, now let me ask you a question. You said being selfish. So how would you define selfishness in this context?
Mm, a good question. I think literally centering yourself in the middle of your life, literally centering yourself in the middle of your lived experience, literally centering yourself in your body, you know, which like is radical, especially depending on your own identity, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um, because there's so much programming and so much uh, patriarchal beliefs still encoded in us, where like women generally, feminine people, we're taught that it's so ridiculous for a woman to be selfish. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason that like the martyr mother figure
Yes.
really exists and is very present. in culture. But I think it's so radical, like for especially artistic people to be selfish with their time and energy and center themselves in their own lives and
Mm.
center their creative work. You know, you can have a 9 to 5, but in your brain, if you can center your creative work and really see yourself as an artist, aside from what you have to do to make money, that's also radical.
Mm.
I had a little epiphany and made a video about that a couple months ago. And I was arguing that as an artist, your side hustle is whatever you have to do to make money. You know, your art isn't the side hustle. It's not. You are an artist because you have the psyche and the soul of an artist. Your identity is not solely tied to how you make money. And if you can like do a little switch and identify more with your art, that's going to be so powerful.
So, what are some of your tools or ways of centering yourself?
Mm. Um, I because I'm a writer primarily and it just like that what I tend to gravitate towards, my like daily practice includes writing, journaling. Um, I have a like a non-negotiable morning practice of like sitting with my coffee and answering these 7 questions from a Tony Robbins book that I read years ago. Do you know Tony Robbins?
I
uh,
recently heard about him on a couple podcasts ago that I did, but I don't know him.
he's like an author and a motivational speaker. And uh, basically, the 7 questions that I answer are more like fill in the blank sentences. And the first one is, I am happy about blank. And then I'm excited about blank. I'm proud of blank. I'm grateful for blank. And it's just like a little priming, kind of like a gratitude list in the morning. I do like that's non negotiable for me. And then usually I'll like journal after that. So that's like my little ritual to like really just kind of like check in with what's going on in here, but also choosing to like focus on what I'm grateful for, focus on what I'm happy about, focus on what I'm excited about too. That can be really helpful for me. Um, but also, I am currently a barista. Like that's my day job. And so, especially on the days where I have a shift, I really try to be so good about, and typically I work in the evenings. So, like from 1 p.m. onward. So, I try to use my mornings to like work on a creative project, whatever is like priority at that point in time, and then also move my body. I love working out and I love going to the gym, but sometimes I'll just go for a walk. And like usually I'm very good about staying consistent in regards to like moving my body and then working on my creative stuff at least once a day, but it changes. You know, not every day is the same.
Yeah, I mean, we are humans, and a lot of times we have all these expectations of ourselves, and our bodies are like, no, today I just don't want to. And I think it's also important to honor that, right? Honor the days where our bodies are like, no, today that is not what I want to do. Um, but being aware of, are we not wanting to do it because we're trying to escape something?
Yeah.
Or are we not wanting to do it because like it just doesn't feel right in the moment? And I feel like we're at a time where there's just so much in the air words wise, so we're always like picking up on words and information, and it's so important to be discerning about, is this really the truth? Like being so honest with ourselves, because I think a lot of us talk about this, like the importance of being honest with ourselves. But at the end of the day, I think it's harder than we make it seem, because we may think we're being honest with ourselves, but what if we're just being honest based on a narrative that we were taught, or based on a narrative that we're just absorbing from someone around us? Then what?
Yes. 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 Completely agree. And that's so interesting because I do another like hot take of mine is like in order to feel really creative and really like be in touch with your creativity, it's just a matter of literally being honest with yourself, you know? But there are so many stories and so many different layers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe not like the ultimate way out of that, but one way to get out of that is to really solidify what it is you value, you know, what is actually most important to you. And then are you acting in alignment with what it is you value? You know, if you really value your creative freedom, you really value your ability to express yourself, but you're not maybe taking advantage of a certain opportunity or acting on a certain project, that's just a misalignment that you could check in on, you know?
You know, what's interesting is when we're young, we're usually asked, what are your values? Right. And I think if you're interested in astrology, maybe at some point you've come to the same question when you go to like Taurus domain and you're like, what are my values? Um, but I think what's so interesting is asking ourselves not what our values are, but what do we value? Because
Mm.
we're so used to asking, like, what are my values? You know, what are my values? But how often do we actually ask, what do I value? And how can I do more of what I actually value? Because it's different, right? What we value is different from the values that we have.
Right.
Um, and what we value, I think those are hints. Those are just hints to show us more of like what we want to do, what our souls want to do, what kind of creative escapades we want to go about on this like 100-year journey at the most.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yes.
I want to talk to you about the importance of devotion and dedication when you're living a creative life, and the beauty of being devoted to our art. I think, like, first of all, devotion, such a beautiful word. So maybe first, would you like to define what is devotion for you? And then what do you think it would take to be devoted to our art?
I agree completely. Devotion is such a beautiful word. Hmm. Well, it's cheesy, but the first thing that comes to me in terms of defining devotion is the word love. It is a sense of love, it's a sense of passion, right? But it's also like a reverence, you know? To be in devotion of our art is to be a disciple of the art, you know, to be so in awe, so in love with it, but also like simultaneously there's this feeling of like I can't control it. I get to experience it. I get to be in communion with it and I get to like worship it almost, you know? Um, and for a person to live devoted to their art, I think practically it comes down to being consistently curious, you know? I recently saw a Liz Gilbert quote online, and a video of her saying that to live a creative life is just to choose curiosity over fear over and over and over and over again. And I think that's what it's like to be devoted to your art. You're just, it's literally an uphill battle of choosing to be curious instead of choosing to be afraid. Um, but I think practically that's what it looks like, you know?
So you'd say constantly just going for it. Whatever it feels like, just go for it and allow it to surprise us. Cause you said like worshiping it without knowing like what it is. And so we're going back to the fact that it's a rebellious act. So if you're not feeling rebellious, maybe it would be harder for you to create. Maybe it would be harder for you to identify as a creative. And maybe that's just a block because I think at the end of the day, every single human is rebellious because every time we're told not to do something, we're like, ah, but what if just a little bit? What if I tried it? We hear don't and we're like, yes, do it, do it.
Yes.
Um, So
Yeah.
crazy to be a human. And maybe that's also why children are more creative because they're curious. They're always curious. They don't have this conditioning that, they were never taught, oh, you're not creative, don't do this. It's only
Mhm.
once we reach like elementary or like high school that teachers start being like, you're not that good at art. All right, what do you mean I'm not that good at art? It's my own flavor of art. And I already see it with like kids. Like I see it with my nieces. I see one being like, she's not that good at art. And I'm like, no, she's good at art. Just because her art is different than your art, it doesn't mean that she's not good at it. But that's how we've been brought up, right? That, oh, yours is not so good because you're coloring out of the lines. Imagine if we knew that we were actually cooler because we were coloring out of the lines.
Exactly. I literally had this conversation with a friend yesterday because he was going on and on about how he's not creative at all. There's not a creative bone in his body. Like, kind of knowing that it would bother me having this conversation too. But then he was like, I can't even draw a stick figure. And I'm like, yes, you can. It's probably going to be a really abstract, really cool stick figure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. How could you not? I mean, maybe you never attempted to, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I feel like the thing with art is we're just not creating the space for it because it's one of those things that you once you create the space, you have a nice cup of coffee, you have a candle, you have some flowers, you like prime yourself up and then it arrives. And maybe the way it arrives is not how we expected it to arrive. Um, but it doesn't mean that it's less art and it doesn't mean that it's less special. So I want to ask you, because I mean, I have started identifying as a artist. So to me, everything is art. Like conversations are art, living is art, writing is art, making food is art. Um, is it the same for you? Is art everything to you? Or like, how do you clarify or describe art?
Mm, yes, I do think only recently I've taken on that perspective too, in like romanticizing my life. It's made me realize that no, everything is art. Um, and I'm living alone now for the first time in my life. So to have my own space and to like really actually be in total control of what do I want this apartment to feel like and realizing, well, I want a lot more color. I want flowers. I want disco balls. Like that was such a good exercise and epiphany for me to have, that like, no, everything is art. I should be much more intentional and also just have much more fun with literally everything, you know? And I know you're in Pomans and Power and you take Chelsea Diane's class, and that woman is like a breath of fresh air. And I love how much she's in love with like flirting and being larger than life. And to your point, conversations are art, connections with people are art. Like just being able to have more fun with things um, is like my approach to living much more creatively.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you brought in Chelsea because I've had like a bunch of women from Poems and Power on here, and I just am building up to eventually having Chelsea. So I
Yeah.
cannot wait until everybody that's been listening to the podcast and just keeps hearing Chelsea in almost every episode. I cannot wait for everyone to actually meet her and listen to a conversation with her and um, just like witness because like her work reminds me of your work and your work reminds me of her work because it's just very oomph. Like it has the oomph that makes us be like, woe is me. And then we watch your stuff and then it's like, oh my God, wait, what do I mean, woe is me? I can do whatever the heck I want. It's my life.
That's a
It's
huge compliment.
amazing.
Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome. I mean it. And it's like I feel like I want like a like I when I feel like I want to go to church, I go to Chelsea's class. When I
Yeah.
feel like I need a little spurt of creativity, I go to your Instagram and I'm like, Kitty, please share some knowledge with me. And I mean, it's amazing. So thank you for doing what you do. I think it's just so powerful to be talking to yourself and giving yourself advice on camera because you're speaking to the rest of us because there's always that thread that runs through every single human, right? And I feel like the thread is stronger within the people that are in similar communities or within people that have had closer conversations.
Yes. And you saying that reminded me of like when I like first started really being interested in creativity and mental health, more or
Mm,
less, the relationship between them. It was because I started writing poetry and I really wanted to post it on Instagram, but I was so scared to do that. And this was like
mm.
2017, 2018. Like I remember wanting to share my stuff and then being so annoyed at like how scary that was and annoyed at the fact that I wasn't doing it. And at that point in time, like I'd just started learning about astrology. I had just started consuming self-help stuff too. I was in therapy already, so like the mental health world was like in my orbit. But so I started really um, looking for like the or noticing maybe the intersection between mindfulness and our mental health and also creativity and how those they go hand in hand and they challenge each other. And that led me to create a magazine back in 2018 that I ran for a couple of years. And it was a mindfulness magazine for creatives. And I literally created it just on Instagram by asking people to send in their artwork that wanted to be a part of it. But I also used it as an excuse to like interview artists that I really liked and ask them about like self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And then I would take those interviews and like the people's art that was sent in and then compile it all into a magazine. But those couple years of talking to people that I looked up to and realizing that we all struggle with the same things, like that was mind blowing for me. And also just taught me so much about like the creative process.
I love that. I think it's so cool that you did that and that you just ask people to send stuff in. And exactly what you said is what I do with this podcast, right? I just find people that I'm so inspired by, and I'm like, wait, if I'm inspired by you, I'm sure more people are going to be inspired by you. And I want to get a glimpse into your process and into your brain. So let's have a conversation. And there are people that are like, there are so many podcasts in the world today. I don't want to start a podcast. But so what if there are so many podcasts? Like there are 8 billion different perspectives in the world. Maybe we can have 8 billion freaking podcasts in the world. And that's not too many.
No, I completely agree with that. Completely. Because the truth is, if everyone actually had a podcast, that means everyone's taking the time to have meaningful conversations, to like
Yes.
focus in on what's important to them and then require and like acquire the skill set required to do this thing.
Yeah.
The world would actually be a cooler place if we all had our own
Yeah.
regulations. Yeah.
Because also everybody would be taking a stance, everybody would be a warrior for whatever they believe they're a warrior for, rather than just sitting and absorbing and noticing and sitting some more.
Big time. And that's something that like I really experienced firsthand, like feeling myself like have to take on like the warrior archetype in a way, in the sense that showing up online, it really forces you, especially when you want to have like more spiritual conversations and like argue, I don't know, uh, maybe a more sensitive subject. It forces you to really clarify what you believe in, you know?
Yes.
Like, are you going to stand for what you believe in
Mm,
enough to say this out loud?
mm,
Internet.
yeah. Yeah, because it's easy to say I want to be authentic, or like authenticity is one of my biggest values. But it's different when you're standing up for it. It's different when you're actually doing it. It's different when you're actually talking about what you believe in. It's different to say authenticity is one of my biggest values and then say nothing, right? But it's different when you say that and you're starting to talk about all the things and you're starting to create these conversations. And maybe, or most likely, there are going to be people that are going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. But we know that it's so true in our hearts that it really doesn't even matter what people say. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to them, because it makes sense to us and it makes sense to the people that we care about.
Big time.
So you said you would interview different artists and talk to them about imposter syndrome. What did you learn from that?
Mm. I learned that like no one's immune from it. Like podcast hosts that I admire, tattoo artists that I admire. My cousin and her husband are professional painters, so I like sat them down and interviewed
Mm,
them. And just like everyone deals with their own feelings of not being enough, not being credible enough, not being far enough along. Like literally all of us, to the point where it's frustrating to
yeah.
look at someone that you think is so successful and be like, why don't you? So I think that was a, a takeaway for sure, that no one's immune from imposter
Mm,
syndrome.
interesting. Okay, I want to go into what you said about perfection being boring, and then I want to talk more about your journey writing and how you came about writing your poetry book. And if you want to share with us a poem, that would be so cool. um yeah, so let's start with, what do you think about perfectionism being boring? I love that hot take.
Well, the thing is, creativity, like we started this conversation saying that it's inherently rebellious, it's inherently disruptive. I think in order to pursue anything creatively, your perfectionism will get challenged, like time and time again. You know, perfection, it doesn't actually exist in this reality on this planet. in our bodies. Like nothing is actually perfect. Um, and so trying to make perfect things and trying to do things perfectly, it really stifles our creative energy. And in order to really create some momentum for yourself, you have to be okay doing things imperfectly. You have to be okay making a mess. You have to be okay experimenting, being playful, messing around, and finding out, you know? And so uh, the other a couple weeks back, I had that little epiphany of like, no, perfection is boring, actually, because I was just trying to look for like a hot take, like something like like a witty way to like snap people out of, I don't know, a more robotic headspace, because it is boring. Even the pursuit of perfection, the pursuit of wanting to be good at this thing, the pursuit of wanting to be taken seriously as an artist, it sucks the life out of you. It drains your personality. It's boring. It makes you a boring person the more obsessed you are with perfection. And I know that because I've been there. you know, as a Virgo, I'm also the oldest daughter of three. I have two younger brothers, and my mom was an alcoholic. So the child of an addict usually takes on perfectionism. It can go like one or two ways usually. Typically we like repeat our parents' patterns or like try to rebel against them. So in my rebelling against my mom, I was took on like a hyper perfectionistic attitude for a good chunk of time, you know.
How did you break out of it?
Oh. Literally um hmm, by giving myself permission to like be a bad person, be a bad guy, by giving myself permission to, I don't know. You know what? Part of it is really also seeing her as a teacher. And she passed away in 2019. And that experience so jarring, right? But also it just echoed that life is so short, life is so precious. I'm literally not going to waste it um, being a perfectionist about who I am and how I spend my time and berating myself. Like, it's just not worth it. Um, so part of breaking out of perfectionism is literally just choosing to live as fully as possible. And that's going to look like making mistakes and messing up and just like learning as you're going, you know?
Sending you so much love for your mom, and I'm sorry to hear that. And I feel like the closer we are to death, the more alive we always become. Always. Because I'm thinking about, like you saying that made me think about how, so I lost my dad last May, and I have just been like doing so much, like trying to create so much and trying to be so much and trying to share so much because like I don't want to escape, but also I don't want to be depressed because I'm still alive. I still have life. Why am I going to be depressed if I have life? But one day I was journaling and I just wasn't able to create anything. And it ended up being 10 pages of journaling. And what I ended up coming up with was when you've seen the line between life and death so closely, nothing else in life is serious. That's serious. You know, being born is serious and dying is serious. But in the middle of that, like, what the heck are we doing making life so serious and that we have to be so perfect and that we have to be in this box and that people have to understand who we are and people have to be able to define us and describe us? Like, none of that is true. We've been taught that that's true, but life is meant to be fun. I mean, we have life, we have breath. And that's something that not a lot of people can say. Maybe there are so many people that want to live that are fighting for their lives in hospitals, but they can't live. Like they can't. And here we are, and we're limiting ourselves, being like, oh, but it's not perfect, so I can't share it. Or, oh, but it's not the way it's usually perfect, right? It's not the way people want it to be, so I'm not going to share it. But how powerful is it that when we actually step into it, we're like, but it's fun for me. So I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if you see it. I don't care if you don't see it. But like, I'm going to create because it's fun. And I think it's so important for all of us to um, sit with and understand what is fun for us and fill our lives with more of that. Because I think the more we have that in our lives, the less we're thinking about how can it be perfect, or oh no, I'm an imposter, because we're not thinking about how are people going to perceive this. We're thinking this is so damn fun. I want to do it for the rest of my life.
Yes, exactly. First, I want to send you love right back. I'm sorry about your dad.
Thank you.
But two, I completely agree. When we're having fun, we're in our bodies. We're like, you're so dropped in to literally your body, but also that present moment, you know? Fun isn't frivolous. It's actually so needed and so cathartic and so nourishing. Yeah. And there's a lack of fun epidemic happening right now, in my opinion.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe it's
Yes.
always been this way. I don't know, but it's definitely present right now.
Maybe it is. Yeah. I think it feels like there's a cap to the age of until how old you can be to have fun. And then it's like you become a teenager or you become, an adult, and it's like, you can't have fun. You got to make money. You got to blah 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 blah. Um but how much more textured do our lives become when we have fun? And how much more alive do we feel when we have fun? And if we're talking about like affirmations, doesn't feeling alive actually make us live longer?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's what we believe that happens. We're always creating our lives with every single thought and thing that we do, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, I want to talk about your poetry journey. So you said you've been writing since forever?
Yes. But it wasn't always poetry. When I started writing or like realizing how much I enjoy writing when I was in high school. Because I was a speech and debate kid. So I did a lot of like speech writing. Um, but even in speech and debate, at least in California where I grew up, like there were many different events and I was drawn to the more theatrical ones. So even though I was speech writing and speech giving, like the event that I participated in was called Original Prose and Poetry. So like it was storytelling, more or less. And then I did that all 4 years of high school. That was my main creative outlet. And then when I got to college, I didn't last very long. But when I got to college, I was so adamant that like I don't want to do speech and debate anymore. I need a break, but I didn't have any creative outlet for the first time ever. And that's when I really struggled with depression for the first time. And I knew that there was definitely a correlation between like my feelings of depression and my need to literally express myself. So that's when I started writing just on my own. Um, and then, yeah, poetry more or less is just a coping mechanism. It's literally such a fun way, like genuinely fun way for me to process things and like record conversations and like find patterns between like things that I've experienced and just like sandwich it all together into like some kind of abstract storytelling. Yeah. Yeah. So the book that I wrote was basically it's called God is a Witch
I
and
love that title.
it's basically like a diary. It's like an abstract version of my diary for like the past 6 years. And so the bulk of it is about my relationship with my mom and like sharing stories and things that I wrote literally just to cope with our dynamic. But not all of it's about her. There's some like romance stuff we've done there and just stuff about myself we've done there. But it's definitely a collection of work that felt so intense for me to put out, you know? And in a lot of ways, like the through line with all the poems is that it's about my intensity, you know, and the subject matters that like always felt too intense for me to like talk about with people just in general. And so literally choosing to release that kind of work um also as a byproduct helped me release so much shame attached to stories about my mom and like even just stories about myself, you know? So that was a very cool experience that also just like reaffirmed to me the healing power of creativity.
Yeah.
you know?
When did you publish?
Last April, the end of April, beginning of May.
So, how does it feel having had all of these words to yourself and then now knowing that it's with the whole world?
Um, in a way, I feel like my secrets are out, you know? Um, and like I said, it was cathartic. It was literally so cathartic and so important that I did release it and like kind of close a chapter of my life and just release a lot of shame in the process. Um, but it's still very precious. It's still very like, I don't know, sensitive stuff. So recently I've been like seeing someone, dating someone new, and I waited a couple months before I like let him take a copy of the book, because I like wanted to like share stories and like have moments with him outside of him reading it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep. That's so interesting because I feel like so when I look at someone's birth chart, I'm like, I can see your soul. But also when you look at someone's poetry book, oh my God, like the way we see a soul through poetry, I think it's absolutely incredible. And I love how you said poetry really, really does feel like that. It does feel like a coping mechanism. And I feel like when I had just lost my dad, that was my main thing because poetry is it's just magic. You get one image, and from one image, you just start writing, and you have no idea where those words are going to take you. And they can take you to 10 years back, they can take you to 20 years back, or they can take you 5 years into the future. And it's on us to be like, no, okay, I trust that poetry knows where it's taking me and I trust poetry enough to lead the way because a lot of times with poetry, I love how Chelsea says, she said in one of the classes, the poet and the poem are collaborators, something like that. And how, neither the poem nor the poet knows how it's going to end, but then it's like just writing it through all the way to the end. And then we read it and we're like, wait, that came out of me? That's what I was feeling? I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yes. Yeah.
It's like photographs and words.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it feels like hunting.
Mm.
The way I work, because I really love to just like find a phrase that I like, or like you said, like an image, like, okay, I have this thing, and now I'm like chasing after trying to like document it, you know, piece it together.
Do you want to read any of your poetry?
Yes. I have I have my book over here. Okay, I think I might just read the very first
Sure.
one in the book. God's nipples are bruised, swollen from feeding her babies. God has a gap between her two front teeth, stretch marks that hang below her waistline, pimples on her chin, and a scar on her lower back from when they removed the melanoma. Mood rings from CVS, three little kids in her back seat, divorce papers. Her father is an alcoholic too. God moves across the country, gets off work, takes the train to Delancey, and kisses a girl for the first time on a dark dance floor. She is tattooed, wearing fishnets, a blonde braided wig, a Tuesday night, waiting for a text message. Overdrawn accounts, shopping carts in the driveway, waiting for someone to turn her into something else. Her daughter calls the cops. Her husband finds her asleep on the couch. Lifetime spent looking for answers that can't be collapsed into words. God isn't a man, God is a mother, and sometimes her center of gravity exists outside of herself. God isn't a man, God is a mother. She cuts her bangs with kitchen scissors and goes to AA meetings.
God is in a man. She's a mother. She's a mother. I love that. Thank you for sharing your poetry. And I think it's life changing to think of God as a woman. And I've been kind of like sharing that with my mom slowly. I grew up Hindu, and so she is very religious. But in Hinduism, there are feminine idols and there are masculine idols. There are different. But in our heads, it's so common that God is a man. So she'll be like, isn't he so amazing? Look at all these things that he surrounded us with. And for the last 3 years, or like maybe not 3 years, maybe 2 years, or maybe a year, I've been like, she, mom, she. Yeah. And so she's like, wait, God is a she? I'm like, God could be a he and she, but God could be a she. Why do we keep talking about he? And it's so powerful. It's so powerful when we start thinking of God as a she.
Big time. Yes. Yes. Because it undoes that sneaky misogynistic perspective,
Yes.
to actually make the creator female,
Yes.
a mother
Yeah.
figure. And for so many centuries prior to Christian beliefs,
Mhm.
and even pre-Christian beliefs, the creator was seen as a woman. Deities were female.
Yep.
That was the standard.
Yep.
Ah,
It's so I live in the Philippines, right? And it's a big Christian country, and Catholicism is huge over here. And from my apartment, I hear the church down the street every day at 12 and 6. They do prayers. And obviously they say in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And each time I hear it, I'm like, why couldn't they add a feminine figure in there? Why does it have to be the Father, the Son, and the Spirit? What, where is the woman? Where did
mm-mm.
she go? Where did she go? And so when we start thinking about it, it's so obvious that things were erased and that things are being kept from us and that things are just not the way they're making it seem. But when you're in it for so long, you stop questioning it.
Totally. I get it. Yeah, big time. Yeah,
So then I think it's creativity, going back to exactly what you said, right? Creativity is about being curious. It's
yeah.
about being like, this is what they're telling me, but is this what's true to me? Or is this just what's true to them and to be accepted by them? I'm saying that that's what it is, but actually it's not authentic to me. Peer pressure
Peer
at the
pressure.
largest scale.
For real. Yes, very effective peer pressure. um, I maybe you already know this, but like the Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing is so interesting because in numerology, number like 3 is a very creative number. It's the number of creation. And the church hijacked the idea of like mother, father, child and turned that into whatever.
Father, Son, Spirit.
Which what does that mean? But it comes from uh, a more I don't know, indigenous ancient understanding of creation and like 3 being a number of creation.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about all of the threes in tarot, right? The Three of Cups. How beautiful is the Three of Cups and like collaboration and community. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I can go hours and hours talking about religion and everything that I've been like sitting with and uncovering from it, but I just think that it's so beautiful because again, primarily Christian country. So in a lot of churches, you go in and you'll see Jesus Christ on the cross. But in some churches, you go in and you see a photo of I guess you never see Mary Magdalene, but you'll see Jesus and Mama Mary, which is still like it's so much more beautiful when you have both. Right? Outside some houses there are crucifixes. Outside other houses there's a man and a woman. And I just feel like it's so beautiful that there are still those people that are fighting for balance and equality and knowing that it just can't be the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And if it is the Father, Son, and the Spirit, then the Spirit is a woman. That's it.
Yeah. I was not raised religious at all. Like my mom's side of the family are Irish Catholics, my dad's side of the family is Jewish. By the time they had kids, my parents, both of them stopped going to church. Like God was never part of the conversation. Um, and uh, when I got into astrology was like my little gateway into spiritual texts and like more spiritual concepts. But I was so surprised that when I started writing poetry, I loved using the word God. I loved throwing it around. I loved making God a witch, God a woman, you know? And so part of the reason why I chose the book title was like, it just felt so shocking. Even though I don't have a background that's religious, like per, the like, the Christian ideals are so pervasive in our world that like it still felt scary to like call God a witch. It's just so silly, but it felt scary to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very brave title to have. Um, but also for the people that resonate, like it's juicy. It's like, yes, I need to read this book. Like that's what it's called. I need to know what's in it. Right? Versus the people that are like, why is she calling God a witch? What does that even mean? But at the end of the day, Kitty, isn't God a witch?
Yes, absolutely. Aren't we all witches?
Yeah. Aren't we all witches? And aren't we all part God?
Yes.
So isn't God a witch? I mean, right when we go to, I think there are things that just sound so controversial when they're said the first time, but you sit and think about it, and it's like, no, that absolutely makes all the sense in the world. Like, yes, I see it, I understand it, and I believe it, rather than like again giving into like, oh, witch, like what is a witch? A witch is, harnessing power for evil, versus knowing actually what is a witch, knowing that we are witches, knowing that we wield our power however we want, knowing that we are alchemists, like a whole different world. We live in a whole different world.
Thank God. Yeah.
um all right, I'm wondering, is there anything else that you want to talk about or you feel like would be important to address in this conversation?
Hopefully this doesn't seem too random because I do think it fits into the conversation as a whole. But I do want to kind of use this space to like stress the importance of like uh how do I say this? I think in order to like really be in touch with your creativity, in order to feel really creatively alive, it does require you be okay being more polarizing, you know? And you being okay that some people are just not going to get it, you know? And more than that, like you being okay being like the bad guy, the bad person, the person who does like um I don't know, like gr- the artist gets to evoke emotion from others, you know? And this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Like, really good art, like, good and bad is subjective, but like an art that does its job evokes emotion from others. And in order to find the people that love you and get your stuff and feel seen by your work, you have to piss people off and you have to confuse people, you know? You have to be okay being polarizing in some way, shape, or form.
I love that you brought that up because I feel like we live in a world where a lot of us have been trained to be people pleasers. And, we've been trained to not do something if other people don't like it or if other people say it's too much. But in the reclamation of being an artist, it's also, I love that, the reclamation of being polarizing, because we do live in a world of dualities. And I like, since 2019, when I started going into all of this, I've been thinking about how crazy it is that we live in a world that is just filled with dualities, but the ultimate goal is unity. It's crazy. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we're surrounded by polarities and we're surrounded by dualities. And at the end of the day, we're meant to know that we're all the same and it's all one. And it seems counterintuitive, but of course, it makes sense that everything is just two sides of the same coin. But let me ask you something. So let's say a person is okay to be polarizing, and they're okay to like break boundaries, and they're okay to break rules, and they share their art. What happens if people start commenting and like bashing them and like being rude? What would you suggest to do?
It's tricky for sure because no one likes hate comments.
Yep.
No one, even like
Mm,
the person with the strongest heart, like hate comments hurt, you know?
yep.
So I think it takes a lot of discernment because sometimes you do have to be open to feedback. Sometimes criticism can be helpful if you're willing to like, again, it's a nuanced conversation, but if someone in your comment section is actually saying something that could help you like learn from this experience or like add to whatever you're doing, then I'd say take it. Take it with a grain of salt, but take it. But then at the end of the day, like your your life belongs to you and your art belongs to you. And really, as long as you are not causing harm to yourself or anyone else involved, go about your business, you know? Like, if people are mad in your comments, like, let them be mad in your comment section, you know? Let them let them fuel the algorithm. Um, because if you are genuinely creating things that you like to do and you're living in alignment with like your own creative spirit more or less, um, if you're still getting hate for that, it's just because they don't get to see every single side of you, you know? The people that choose, all of us have an opinion and all of our opinions are subject to change. You know, there's artists that I don't listen to, people that I don't like, whatever, you know, and it doesn't mean that my mind can't change. Um, but typically when someone decides that they don't like us, um, maybe they just don't have, it's usually because they don't have a whole picture, the fuller picture of who we are as a person. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think nobody will ever have a full picture of who we are other than us. And sometimes we don't even have a full picture of who we are, which is kind of why we create art, because it's true through the art that we get to see the different parts of us that exist that, don't come out in our daily conversations, but only come out when we carve out that space and be like, I want to know. I want to know what it is. And so it's just so powerful, first of all, to be sharing it. So I can imagine how when the hate comments come, like it hurts. But also, do you agree that no media is bad media?
Hmm, I guess so. And that all media, all press is good press.
Yeah, sorry, not all, not no media. All media is bad media. All press. You get what I'm saying,
Yeah, 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 I do.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you start getting attention. Maybe your page starts getting attention. You're probably getting more people that are gonna comment and be hating on you, but you're also getting more people that actually completely agree with you.
Yeah. And you can literally find your people in that process too. Find the fellow,
Yes.
find your community. That reminded me of like a science project that I did in eighth grade, um, where the project itself was to take something unscientific and make it scientific. It was like an end of the year, like the school year was about to end. The teacher gave us something to do. But I chose to like make Lady Gaga scientific. And I did that by like making a little survey and asking people their opinions about her. Like, do you know who she is? Have you listened to her music? Like that kind of stuff. And then out of all the surveys that I did, um, I got up in front of class and I argued that Lady Gaga, oh, sorry, part of this was like having to prove a hypothesis. And so my hypothesis was something along the lines of Lady Gaga has made an impact on pop culture or whatever. Like she has made an impact with her career. And out of all the people that I surveyed, every single person knew who she was. And I used that to argue, yeah, she's made an impact because everyone had an opinion. Not everyone liked her, not everyone listened to her stuff, but everyone knew who that woman was. And I thought that was really powerful.
I mean, and when we share our stuff, the goal isn't to be liked. The
Mhm.
goal is to share. The goal is we have this thing that we feel so strongly about, or we've created this thing. And yes, it may not be perfect, but we're proud and we want to put it out there. Right. And whatever people say, it doesn't matter anymore. But then I love how you said, but everybody had an opinion. And I think that's how we know what's powerful, or that's how we know, mm, not necessarily what's powerful, but that's how we know like the narrative, maybe, that we're being fed, right?
Mhm.
Because, for example, Donald Trump, everyone will have a say about Trump. Nobody loves Trump, or maybe people do love Trump. Well, I don't know. People do love Trump, but everybody has an opinion, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Everybody has something to say, just like you said, like Lady Gaga, or like Sabrina Carpenter, or like, Chapel Roan, like all of these people today, everybody has something to say about them. Not everybody is going to say good things, but that isn't the goal. Again, we live in a dual world, like a polarizing world, and there will be the good and there will be the bad. And I think at the end of the day, we are the great equalizers. And it's on us to be like, I'm taking the bad and I'm alchemizing it into good. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's taking the advice of people and changing it. Maybe it's taking the shit and turning it into gold. Maybe it's completely ignoring the person. It could be it could be whatever, but like we are the great equalizers, and it depends on us how we process that emotion that we receive from reading that, and it doesn't have to be so extreme. It's
No.
if we make it extreme, it's on us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And what's cool about people like Chapel, like Lady Gaga, um, these like great artists that like are well known in pop culture, what they also do is make people feel safer, you
Yeah.
know? They like they have such a deep connection with the people that listen to their stuff, because they chose to do the brave thing and they chose to put themselves out there. And it goes for all of us too, you
Mhm.
know? um because it's one thing for me to be like, you need to be polarizing, and that could feel so scary to like an artist that's just trying to figure out how to channel their stuff out. But really, you just have make what you need to make. Take your shit that you've been handed, turn it into gold, write your poetry, make your songs, like put it out there, put the stuff out there that helps you feel safer in your body, and that will inevitably be polarizing, and but it'll also inevitably help you find your people, you know.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, once we have our people, like we create our own lives. That's it. I think at the end of the day, all we're meant to do is create our own narrative of which world we're living in and be very clear about what's a yes in our world and what's a no in our world and become aware that we are creative. And really, that's it. That's
Yeah.
the recipe for life.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. This has been such a fun conversation. I have two last questions for you before we close. My first one is, what do you feel like makes you a artist?
Karina, I knew you were going to ask this. So I've been cheating and thinking about it. um, I don't really know, but I think it's the fact that like I'm so determined to like live as fully as possible, to have as much fun as possible. What could that actually look like, you know? And just determined to like really live and make my life as beautiful as possible, you know? Yeah.
And where can people find you and how can they work with you? What kind of stuff do you do?
Hmm. People can find me all over the internet, on Instagram, on TikTok. My handle is at Kitty Knorr, KittyKnorr. I also have a website, kittyknorr.com. And right now, I'm working as a creative coach. And so I'm currently offering one on one, like mentorship sessions with people. Um, but back in January, I ran my first coaching container. So it was like a month-long program with a group of people, and that was awesome. And I know that I want to do more of those throughout the course of this year. So I'll be doing that.
Perfect. So I'll put in your information in the bio as well for anyone that is looking. But other than that, thank you, Kitty. This has been so amazing. You are such a artist, and every single word that you have said has come out of your mouth proves that you are a artist. So thank you for sharing your artistry, and thank you for your hot takes, and just thank you for being such an inspiration for creatives around the world. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Karina. Thank you so much for having me.